From the bright spotlight of the Winter Olympics to the dark shadows of the criminal underworld, the transformation of Ryan Wedding is nothing short of jaw-dropping. A figure once celebrated for his sporting prowess is now one of the most wanted men on the planet, linked to a billion-dollar drug empire. This is not just a story of athletic triumph and defeat. It's a tale of how far someone can fall when driven by darker motivations. What went so tragically wrong? How did a once promising Olympian become enmeshed in the violent, high-stakes world of international drug cartels? Ryan Wedding's journey began in Thunder Bay, Ontario, a region blanketed in snow for much of the year. It's a place where winters are long, cold, and the snow piles high, perfect for a young man to fall in love with snowboarding. And fall in love he did. With his grandparents running a ski hill, snow sports became a natural part of his life. His passion and talent led him to pursue the sport competitively, eventually joining the Canadian national snowboard team in 1995. Wedding's future looked bright, full of promise as he trained to compete on the world stage. By 2002, that promise culminated in his qualification for the Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. For any athlete, representing your country in the Olympics is a crowning achievement, a moment that etches your name into history, no matter the result. Ryan Wedding stepped onto the global stage wearing the red and white of Team Canada. It was a proud moment not only for him, but for his family and his country. The men's parallel giant slalom was his event, and he was expected to make his mark. But in the end, the race didn't go as planned. Wedding finished a disappointing 24th out of 32 competitors, a respectable showing, but far from what he had envisioned. It was after this, many believe, that the trajectory of Wedding's life began to veer off course. For most athletes, the end of an Olympic run would spark a period of reflection, a return to training, or perhaps even a pivot to a new career. But for Wedding, the slide down the slope had just begun. Just a few short years later, in 2008, Ryan Wedding made headlines again. This time, not for his athletic achievements, but for his involvement in a cocaine trafficking scheme. He was arrested in California while attempting to purchase 24 kilos of cocaine from an undercover FBI informant. The sting operation was part of a broader investigation, and Wedding's arrest sent shockwaves through the sporting world. How could an Olympian, someone who had represented their country on the world stage, have become embroiled in such a criminal enterprise? In court, Wedding expressed deep regret, claiming he had lost his way. "I guess I lost the Olympic spirit," he told the judge. Yet, rather than serving as a turning point in his life, this arrest seemed to mark the beginning of a much darker path. After serving his sentence, Wedding didn't fade into obscurity or turn his life around. Instead, he resurfaced, this time as a much more dangerous figure, linked to one of the most notorious drug cartels in the world. By 2015, Wedding had relocated to Montreal, where he was named in a sprawling cocaine smuggling conspiracy that captured the attention of law enforcement across Canada. This wasn't just another drug bust. The individuals involved in the operation included high-ranking military personnel, including a member of the Canadian Air Force who had access to restricted areas of Canada's largest airbase, and a Coast Guard officer serving on a patrol vessel. This level of involvement raised serious concerns about security breaches and how far-reaching the criminal network had become. The case, dubbed Project Harrington, also came with a chilling reality. Many of those involved had been murdered in the years following the bust. The violent nature of the drug trade was becoming increasingly evident, and authorities began to suspect that Wedding was far more involved than initially thought. He had seemingly disappeared from public view, retreating into the shadows, But he was far from finished. Authorities alleged that Wedding had moved to Mexico, where he formed direct ties to the powerful and violent Sinaloa cartel. This is the same cartel that has terrorized parts of Mexico for years, known for its brutal enforcement tactics, including kidnappings, assassinations, and large-scale drug trafficking operations. Wedding, with his growing network, became a key player in this dangerous world. He is said to have arranged for vast quantities of cocaine to be smuggled into the United States from Colombia, where it would be stored in secret stash houses across Los Angeles. From there, it was distributed across North America, with truckloads of drugs making their way north to Canada. At its peak, authorities estimate that Wedding's syndicate was moving 60 tons of cocaine a year. To put that in perspective, that's roughly 150 kilos of cocaine every single day, a staggering amount that could fuel drug markets in multiple countries. The network was reportedly worth over $1 billion, making it one of the most lucrative and dangerous criminal operations in North America. But the drugs weren't the only issue. The violence that came with the trade was equally alarming. Prosecutors have accused Wedding and his associates of orchestrating multiple murders, including the horrific 2023 killings of a husband and wife in their home outside Toronto. Their daughter, who was shot 13 times, miraculously survived, but the attack shocked the community and underscored the deadly consequences of Wedding's operations. Authorities believe that the couple was mistakenly targeted in a drug-related revenge killing, a tragic case of mistaken identity. Another murder linked to Wedding's syndicate occurred in Niagara Falls in 2024. This time, it was a calculated execution, believed to have been ordered by Wedding's right-hand man, Andrew Clark, who was recently arrested by Mexican authorities. Clark, another Canadian, had become a key figure in the organization, using 17 different aliases to avoid detection. Together, Wedding and Clark allegedly ruled their criminal empire with an iron fist, ordering hits and using violence to maintain control over their vast drug operations. The logistics of the syndicate were as complex as they were deadly. According to court documents, Wedding and his associates used sophisticated methods to ensure their drug shipments made it across borders undetected. They employed a system of encrypted phone apps and fake identities to communicate, often using nicknames like El Jefe for Wedding and the Dictator for Clark. Their preferred method of verifying identities was a system they referred to as tokens, serial numbers from banknotes that were exchanged as proof of authenticity before any transaction took place. Despite these precautions, the syndicate was infiltrated by a confidential FBI informant who managed to gain access to their encrypted communications and provide crucial intelligence to law enforcement. This allowed the FBI to track the movements of the group, intercept their drug shipments, and ultimately bring down the organization. In October 2024, the US Department of Justice announced the results of a massive investigation into the Wedding syndicate, leading to the arrest of 16 individuals involved in the operation. One of the most high-profile arrests took place in Florida, where FBI agents raided the mansion of Naheem Yorye Bonilla, a Canadian music producer living in Miami. Bonilla, who owned a popular restaurant in South Beach, is accused of distributing large quantities of cocaine on behalf of Wedding and Clark. The investigation, dubbed Operation Giant Slalom, a nod to Wedding's Olympic event, has shaken the world of international drug enforcement. But while many of the key players are now in custody, Ryan Wedding himself remains a fugitive. With 18 known aliases, including Public Enemy and Giant, Wedding has managed to evade capture, leaving authorities in North America and Mexico on high alert. The rise and fall of Ryan Wedding serves as a sobering reminder of how quickly one's life can spiral out of control. From the pristine slopes of the Winter Olympics to the brutal world of international drug cartels, Wedding's story is one of betrayal, violence, and greed. While his criminal empire may be crumbling, the full extent of his operations and the damage they have caused is still being uncovered. As the legal battles begin, with the accused awaiting trial, the world will watch to see how this extraordinary story unfolds. Will Ryan Wedding finally be brought to justice, or will he remain a ghost, forever out of reach?